People describe rejection sensitivity dysphoria as like a just existential horror, just an absolute end of the world, everything crashing down. And perceived rejection, same as the PDA stuff, could be, you know, again, like I got a parking fine. Oh, that's a rejection of my capacity to park. Oh, that person looked away when I said that. That's a rejection of what I said. It could be really, and then actual criticism is just killer. It just feels like everything. You might freeze, you might run, you might go into fight, you might fawn. You just go into absolute survival mode. And so, yeah, PDA, you're more likely to be getting out there, shooting your mouth off, getting in trouble. And RSD, you're more likely to be at home being like, not worth it.
Not taking the risk.
Not taking the risk. Or get the best at the things I do so that I completely reduce the risk. Plan, prepare, avoid rejection at all costs.
Be perfect.
Be perfect. Be whatever it is, which is, again, hard bloody work. So, yeah, working with people where they might have some of those profiles I think is important. And again, insider of PDA, outsider of RSD, but working with a lot of people who are generous in telling me what it's like and how much it sucks.
Can you say a bit about how you view neurodivergence?
Yeah, I think for me it's more about being as open and inclusive as possible rather than this idea of like who's excluded out of it or who doesn't meet it or it's more like, okay, yeah, it's like philosophical. If we think of neuronormativity like patriarchy, it sets a criteria for the brain-body being that no one can fit. There is no such thing as a neurotypical brain. You can scan everyone's brain in the population. No two are the same. So there's no such thing as a neurotypical brain. But the idea of neuronormativity is that there's a more perfect, there's neuroperfect. And so that disadvantages everyone, but especially people who are further from that. And so there's no line where you cross where it's like, now you're neurodivergent. There's just how are you disadvantaged by neuronormativity with the knowledge that if we're working from a disability justice perspective, everyone is going to benefit for that. If we work with the idea of rest, with interdependence, with the idea that not everyone can work full-time or not work at all, if we create a community that is allowing neurodiversity as we would hope for biodiversity, different creatures, different organisms existing in different ways together. So, yeah, for me, neurodivergent is kind of shorthand. I guess neurononconforming is more putting it back on the system that says that some of the ways I do things is wrong. I do want to acknowledge my privilege as someone who is speaking, someone who can mask for my own safety, emotional safety included when I need to for short periods of time. Yeah, if you have higher support needs, you're not as visible, you're less able to keep yourself safe in a neuronormative world. You have less access, there's more shame. So definitely acknowledging that as a privilege, and then also the sort of tag onto that privilege as well being that I'm chronically underdiagnosed, or I have been to date. So, you know, not knowing I had binocular vision dysfunction and just getting really motion sick, not knowing I had POTS, not knowing what my cyclic burnout was or how to prevent it. So being underdiagnosed is like, yeah, I've had a lot of opportunities and I haven't been isolated out of many spaces, but I have struggled, and I have struggled in ways that no one could make sense of with me. And for me, having these diagnoses, labels, self-identifying, whatever it is first and foremost about making my life work for me and not the other way around. So what do I need? And yeah, again, that's not working full-time, and that's not working for a big organisation. And that's a privilege, and not seeing unpaid work as less important to me or less significant, having some things that I do that are voluntary, having crafts that I make that are a part of my life, even though I'm not going to be called a famous artist or make money from it, being in nature, knowing that the seasons affect me, knowing that I will feel different in winter and spring and summer. I'll have different capacities and I'll have different limitations. That's the thing with neurodivergence, it's dynamic. So it's not lived experience. We don't find out who we are and then it stops in the way lived experience was talked about for like substance use and then recovery. We're living experience. It's different for me to be a neurodivergent mother than it was for me to be a neurodivergent single woman. And I imagine it'll be different to be a neurodivergent woman going through perimenopause and menopause. It's a dynamic thing, and it also reflects the environment you're in. In some environments, I'll look a lot more neurodivergent, and in others I won't. Or I'll look neurodivergent with everyone else who's also looking quite neurodivergent.
Can you talk a bit more about the idea of neuro rewilding?
Yeah.
I feel like you've touched on it a bit with talking about how to support yourself.
Yeah. So again, that idea of I just want as many diverse stories of neurodivergence as possible. You know, I just want everyone to feel like there's so much out there that different people can connect with in different ways. For some people, it will be unusual thoughts, which can be called psychosis or paranoia or other things. For some people, it might be, all sorts of things, but just want stories out there that are welcoming, that give people a chance and create elders. 96% of people over 60 who are autistic are not diagnosed. And so it's like, where are our elders, our disability elders? Like, we have the disability justice movement, thank God. We're going to need to be the generation of elders for people coming up. And so, yeah, I like the terms neuro wild, just the idea of like being free, feisty, active, being a kid, and it works. How are we neuro wild? What are ways that we just do it and it feels good? Okay. Neuro taming, the requirements of our environment. And so we need to tame our brains to be able to do mainstream education. We do. All of us do to different degrees. If you're more neurodivergent, you have to do it more. And so I see it like a bilingualism. How did you learn the second language, which is the neuronormative language, and apply those skills? It's harder if you don't know what your first language is or have a chance to speak it. But I validate neurotaming as a second language. And it's like, I am bilingual. I can do the neuronormative stuff. Not small talk. Don't make me do small talk. But I can. I don't like to. But other people don't know how to speak my language if they're neuronormative generally. So I really want people to feel like, yeah, I have a bilingualism. I can move between worlds. And also balance that. If we only speak our additional language, and if it exhausts us, and if it's not our choice where we speak it, that's a problem, I think. Whereas I'm not telling people like, only be neuro wild and that's your true self. And if you're not doing it, no, it's a skill set and it is useful. For me, a lot of my neurotaming, more just in the general community, is saying things gently so people understand I mean them well. Generally, when I offer feedback on something, I mean it well, and I'm quite internally, I guess neuro-wildly, I'd be quite direct. Like, I noticed this, I think this would help. But that can be perceived as judgment and being controlling and overbearing, and no one asked for that. And so my neurotaming is like, how do I gently word this, test the water, check, say it in a way. And that's because I care that the other person doesn't feel attacked, and I care that the other person doesn't feel put down by my feedback. Even though I know my intentions, neurowild, my intentions are just to help. I think I want to avoid the binary of masking, unmasking. I think I get it, and I think it's also a little bit dangerous because we don't want people feeling like they're the most virtuous at their most unmasked, and if you're masked, you're I don't. But the idea of that is that neuro rewilding is, how do we bring it back? If there's things we've suppressed and lost and hidden and not allowed ourselves that feel good, that don't hurt anyone, let's see if we can bring them back into our lives.
It just makes me think of, like, in terms of like parts work or internal family systems, and even my own experience in my life and what I've uncovered and reintegrated in therapy, that cutting off parts of ourselves, I think, cuts us off from pieces of or access points to vitality.
Correct.
And it takes a lot of energy to keep that part of ourselves cut off and in exile or repressed or disowned. It takes a lot of ongoing, continuous energy forever to keep parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't like that part of me that got criticised. That's a really neurodivergent part of me that no one's allowed to see.
Yes.
And so you've mentioned in this conversation burnout. I imagine that is a huge contributor to burnout, having to repress parts of ourselves. And that I imagine this neuro rewilding giving us access back to these parts of ourselves in a way that nourishes us and serves us. And like you're saying, not that we have to go and let that part of ourselves in the meeting at work. No, you don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that.
And maybe that's some people's fear, that if they kind of let that back in, they won't have control over it. But I think you can integrate things in a really...
And you might then find that you don't want to be at the workplace where you can't do it at the meeting. And I know that's a scary part. The scary part can be, when I start to really step into things that feel good to me, some of the jobs I had, roles I had, environments I was in, I realize how bad they are for me. And there can be a real grief in that. Sometimes the burnout, often at the start of a burnout experience, the wish is to get back to where you were, get back to active, get back to on top of everything, get back to, and often what actually comes through, sometimes multiple burnouts, is I'm not supposed to go back to the thing that keeps burning me out. I actually need that to be different. And that's hard. That's really hard stuff. It is then allowing beautiful new ways of being, but the wish to go back sometimes is a bit tricky in this work.
And potentially a huge challenge to the identity we've developed, the idea of who we are, that, if I'm not in this role, if I'm not able to perform in this way, who am I? What's my value? And I wonder about that scale.
Continuum?
Yes, continuum of neurodiversity. That kind of like perfect brain that we're supposed to be being or aspiring to be. Would you say that that is dictated by capitalism?
Everything. Colonial, imperial, patriarchal, white supremacist.
And I imagine
ableist.
that even that perfect brain changes depending on who's looking at it.
Yeah.
Like who values what. Like
you can scan the brain with an MRI and then you can do a behavioural checklist and get different things. And again, they'll all be different and they'll be dynamic across life and situation. Yeah. Gosh, where were we before my brain? We were Neuro Rewilding. Yes, so it can mean that you change the environment you were able to do before. That can be a hard part of the rewilding process, is things you were able to do before become less accessible as you let yourself not do them or let yourself do things you want to do. You start to want to do them more, which is beautiful, but it's quite confronting. So I guess that's where the connecting that these ways of being have a history and have beauty and value, and being around people who can also celebrate and support that. And also you're not expected to know what they are. People come in and they're like, okay, I'm identifying as neurodivergent. What am I unmasking to? What's the next step? And you can try things on. You can kind of be like, maybe my body wants to do this, and then be like, not really. Or like, do I want to eat the same breakfast every day? Maybe. Does it do me any harm? No. Okay, I'm going to eat the same breakfast every day. Like, it's just trying these things out. It's really little things, really, and that you imagine in your mind that it's going to be the end of the world when you actually let yourself do it, and then nothing happens and you're like, huh.
Yeah.
For me, swaying to regulate myself in public spaces has been a big one.